part 2, painting the eyes and finishing up with Gala. HH is house paint highlights is what I call it. I like to use house paint a lot. I can mix it with other colors and get different stuff. The only thing I can tell you about house paint, if you use it, is that when it's really hard to wipe off, and it's a little different. I mean, you have to get used to it before you can master it, or as I call it. But I like to mix it and use it for like highlights, because when you paint over it with like a purple acrylic, for instance, you can wipe off when it dries, of course. That's what I mean. When it dries, you can wipe off certain areas, and the white shows back up, and still leaving the purple on the other parts of the color. And that's an interesting effect too. It looks really neat. Okay, now here we are about to get started on the eyes. I could have cut some of this out, I know, but I wanted to really show you how the working of the hair is being done on the highlights. And I'm using the house paint on the eyes too, because when you put pink over the house paint and you can smudge it off, it gives a really realistic look to the eye. You know, that where the edges look pink, bloodshot kind of look that the eye has, and then it has that glossy dome look also. Here I'm outlining with my deep red Inktense pencil again, but this one I'm going to start putting in some detail, so I'm going to be more careful about what I'm doing. Here I'm applying just water on the very thin paintbrush and just pulling a tiny amount of color down into the eye. This is just practice, and I highly recommend you to go and look at some irises up close and see the designs that these eyes have, and they're absolutely amazing. To me, when I look into the eyes, I see the universe. So their eyes are incredible to me. Now also, I want to remind people who, when you're doing eyes, the eye has a shadow on the top lid. This is so incredibly important to make sure that you get that shadow in there to give the upper eyelid that shadow part. And whether you exaggerate it or however you do it, it has to be there. That is very important. And I wish I could point to it and show it to you. Maybe I should put some arrows in there. To me, if that shadow is not there, you've just got a flat doll eye. So that's all I can say about that shadow under the top eyelid. There we go. Pulling that color is the same watercolor technique as you used around the face, around the eye, but just be very careful. And if it goes too much, then you take your Q-tip and you clean it out, because you want it to stay clean here. You want a very glassy, transparent feel to it. And you're working with watercolor, but also you're working with acrylic. So the two don't mix. I don't know if you noticed that or not. When I go up, I'm about to go up close up to this. Remember that your surface has a very rough grit to it, so it's grabbing a lot of watercolor pencil. So you're using that for you. Now right there you saw me, I made a mistake. I got too much water on her eye and I dabbed it up real quick. So when here's where we got close, and I'm using the broken blue pencil like a pastel stick, and I think it's because I'm cheap. I don't know. I just anything has color and I'll start smearing it all over the place. Here's up a close picture of it. Now, if you notice the real eye, look at all those strings and fibers that is going to the black circle, and it's moving outward to the outside of the circle. You do exactly the same. It doesn't matter what color you use, as long as you use the brush strokes, it's the same as those fibers. And even in the brown eye, you have them, you know, and there's different designs, there's different, you know, colors and mixtures of colors, and the light hits the eye different ways. And this is the point where you're doing an abstract kind of painting with lines that move to the circle. That's how I see it. And that's why I said it looks like each person has their own universe in their eye. And the way you paint that eye, it's not the same for each person. So if you say, well, I'm going to get one technique that's going to work for all my eyes, well, okay, good for you to do that. But in reality, each human eye is different, like a fingerprint. So that's all I have to say about that. Here I'm going into the lips, and I'm using just a pinky mauve house paint samples. These are little house paint samples you get for $1. And they're very, very nice. I like them. They're matte finish. And they mix very well with my acrylics and my watercolors. I don't know why they do that, but they do. Have you noticed I use a lot of stuff from the hardware store? That's from my old days of working in the hardware store. I'm using a watercolor pencil for my lines, and I'm just working the lips down. Again, I'm looking closely at other people's lips for that look that a lip has. So to help you practice on this, just start looking at magazines, at women's lips, men's lips, children's lips, and just paint that. Don't paint anything else. Just paint their lips over and over and over again. And you'll start seeing what I'm talking about. I used to avoid the nose because I just thought it just wasn't necessary. So, oh yeah, the nose, we don't need it. Let's cut it off. Let's make it a little straight line. I don't want to work with it. But people were asking me to paint the nose, so I started painting the nose, and it's okay. But again, to me, a nose is just a line with some holes in it, so so I'll be very brief on how to paint a nose, and it's not much. If already to be interested in watching this video, you probably already know about shadow and that kind of information on how to build the bridge and the nose part. Here you're seeing me just trace over more with my colored pencils and ink tints and pulling down color. You won't be putting any more gesso layers. You've already done all your work. The gesso's finished for now. Your layering is finished for now. Now you're doing the magic. I call this the magic time, and this part 2 video is going to be more interesting to look at because you're seeing the results of all your hard work from the part 1. Preparing the paper for receiving this watery texture. It's not a texture, it's a watery look. I don't even know what it is. Here's an orange, and I am a firm believer in understanding your color wheel. In fact, I think that's something they should teach them in kindergarten. Is learn and understand your color wheel. 101. Okay. Because understanding the color wheel helps you pick your colors to work well with each other. This is called a water brush, and I bought 3 of them, and I used to go to a class here in Choisy-le-Roi, and I only have 1 now. I don't know what happened to my other watercolor brushes, but I love this little device. It has water in the chamber part, and you just squeeze it a little bit and it comes down. And I'm using acrylic over my watercolor work that I just got through doing. And it doesn't mix with your pigment that you've already put down, which is your watercolor pigment. And it just gives a nice, rich color of shadow to the lips, to your nose. I don't know if you saw that little nose thing happen right there, a little nose magic. I'm going in a little closer for you to see, and then I'm pulling up to make those, tiny cracks that we have on our lips. Yes, we do. And see how that's just acrylic going over your watercolor. And just see there. Now it's a watercolor technique. See how those little pieces are not mixing with the with your watercolor, and that's what you want. You want that. So you're gonna let that dry. Now I'm adding the black eyes. Now this is very important, guys. You have to get those black holes perfectly round, and they have to be on the same plane. If these two don't happen, you get cock eyes. And this, I use a ruler. This is so important. Now make sure this is all dry, of course. Don't be doing this with wet stuff or anything. Now here I'm using the HH, the house paint white over my dots again. Now this will not move, and you can come back after it dries, of course, and hit it with like pink and the white of the eyes, and you can hit it with some green on the highlights of the iris, and then smudge it off and have a semi-transparent color reflecting through that white dot. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just something you have to work with and play with yourself until you understand how the acrylic paints and the house paints don't mix either. They mix if you mix them to begin with, but once they dry, they don't bind to each other, I guess you should say. Here I'm just cleaning up the eyes, because I've gotten her eyes are too bloodshot. She's been drinking too much, but I'm cleaning up the whites of the eyes and fixing that. And she's basically done now. I was really happy with this. I'm adding more highlight. I'm adding more shadow to the top of the lid. That is so important, is that shadow. Here I'm finishing up the last parts of adding some interesting color to her forehead. More different colors, which is just the same orange again. There's not much I can say about that except just watch it. I can't even explain it. I learned so much watching myself paint and trying to explain what I'm doing, because when you're doing this kind of thing, I'm going to tell you, you're not inside your right mind, I guess. You're in another part of your brain. And you can't talk, actually. So it would be very, very hard for me to do this and then explain it as I'm doing it. I don't think it could happen, but here goes in the eyebrows. The very last step is your eyebrows. I am experimenting with different types of eyebrows right now. I was making them look like real eyebrows with a brush and brushing them up with a pig bristle brush to make them look realistic. But I'm starting to have more fun with the fairy eyes with the little leaves. There's like leaves as their eyebrows. But that has to be done last, or you're just going to have so much trouble cleaning up around it, trying not to smudge it. And now I'm adding some shadow to her chin, because in the little postage stamp icon, I saw some shadow below her lip, so I'm adding those. And women don't like too much shadow on their face, so don't add too much because you make them look old and they don't think that's too flattering. Now I'm just coming in with the last of my dark shadows, just playing with the hair. I love the hair. It was just beautiful, just really beautiful. I didn't even know what she really looked like until I talked to her on Facebook and found out that she was quite pretty, actually. And her hair is straight, it's not curly, so she must have done something to her hair for this picture. Well, the last part, I'm going to be spraying it with an acrylic base spray, the kind you use in furniture stores, to fix everything into place. So if you sneeze on it, it's not going to bleed all over the place. This is a very, very strong smelling stuff, so you have to do it outside or well ventilated. But she's done. If you have any questions, I have a Facebook page, and I would love to talk with you or help out or in any kind of way. Thank you for watching.